Alright, so I've taken a little bit of break from Bug Heartless to brew up some decks with the Dragon's Maze spoiler. It's fully spoiled now. Um, I've been brewing a few decks since it was half spoiled, and I think a card that I really after a while decided that I wanted to brew with was Maze's End. Uh, that would be this one right here. It's the mythic land in Dragon's Maze, and I would say it's the poster boy for the expansion, maybe, or would that be? Yeah, I guess, but it's a card that almost everyone unanimously agreed was terrible the moment that they saw it. Even I did too for a while, honestly, because it just, I mean, it comes into play tapped for one. Um, it's just reading the effect. It just feels so slow. 10 gates, all the different gates, and that means actually having to play with gates, mana that comes in tapped. Um, on top of that, the winning clause is tied to its ability and not just it being on the board. You know, a lot of people think a mythic slot is wasted on it, and why even bother? I think right now on the Gatherer page it has it's a mythic with like a 2.2 of 5 rating. No one likes it, and I think that means no one was really going to even brew with it. But I wanted to at least give a deck with it a, a try, I guess. So last night I decided to sit down. I decided if I'm going to play Maze's End deck, this means I'm going to have all 5 colors in my deck. So because I knew I'd forgotten some cards that were in standard, I spent a good amount of time looking through literally every card that is currently legal in the format and seeing what I wanted in the deck. And I think at first I settled on a 120 card list. It wasn't a realistic list; it was just a test list. And I looked at it, and there were lots of alternate win cons aside from the maze as well, and I tested out in some matches and just to see how it felt. I had Dragon Shift in there because I had a bunch of defenders, and I can just overload a Dragon Shift when I had a bunch of defenders to just win the game as an alternate win con. And I had Mill, and I had Door to Nothingness, which works perfectly with a five color deck that I'm forced to play if I'm playing Maze's End. So it gives me two really janky alternate win cons that come together. Eventually, the list that I have now is a 90 card list, and I know some people are scoffing right now. 90 cards, but it's what I have so far, and I've been steadily cutting cards as I play test it more, and I get a better feel for the deck. Um, it's I think eventually the goal is to get down to 60. There was a 60 card version that I tried for a while, and it just didn't do as good as the 90 card version. So I mean, a lot of people are really most people would dismiss this deck right away for using Maze's End, and whoever's left is going to dismiss it for being a 90 card deck. But it has been doing surprisingly well. So let's take a look at it. Um, the deck. Let's start with the creatures. So every creature in the deck has Defender. Every creature. Um, Gatecreeper Vine is going to fetch us a gate, maybe fix colors if necessary. Um, Axebane Guardian is the star creature of the deck, really, or one of the star creatures of the deck, because he's going to be what ramps. Like, there have been several times where I just haven't gotten gates going that well, but I have a bunch of defenders, and I hit a door, and then Axebane just gives me the mana I need to just pop that door and win. He gives me any he gives me mana in any color I want, with the number being how many defenders that I have, and it's pretty sweet. Doorkeeper adds to the one of the alternate win cons in the deck, which is milling the opponent out. Fogbank is a star defender because there are just some creatures. See, most defenders in this deck have about 4 toughness, with Tree of Redemption and Gatekeeper being exceptions to that. So that means, as you know, I can't reliably chump a Thragtusk or reliably chump Hunt Master, and that's Fogbank helps with that. It gives me time to dig for something while I chump. Tree of Redemption, beautiful defender card. I actually forgot this card even existed, and that's really why I looked through every card in the format, because I knew there would be gems that I had forgotten. But this card fits perfectly in the deck. It's the only 4-drop creature. I think all the other defenders are 2 or 3 drops, and it's good against aggro. It's good against a lot of things, and it has a nice chunk of toughness. It can reliably block almost anything. Angelic Wall for flyers. I think Fogbank and Angelic Wall are my only things that can block flyers. The 120 card version had Trestle Troll, which had reach and had regenerate, but he got cut eventually. Haven't really decided on the final cut for creatures yet. Basilica Guards gives me Extort, which has come in handy a few times. We've got 3 Chromatic Lanterns. That gives us... It fixes mana a little bit when it needs to be. It acts as ramp and it acts as mana fixing for Door to Nothingness. We've got Sands of Delirium, which adds to the mill alternate win condition. It's a one-of. It's pretty much all that's needed. I might even cut it, because there's been plenty of times where just Jace has been enough, so we'll see. But it's there because with 1 Axebane Guardian and a bunch of defenders, I have a lot of spare mana I can just dump into milling a person. Possibly more than Jace can per turn. Door to Nothingness, secondary win condition. Instance, Fog. I have a bunch of defenders, but some decks I just need Fog. There's certain against control decks. This deck really shines well because they can sit with 1,000 counters in their hand if they want to. There's no dissipate. There's no syncopate stopping Maze's End. It's a land drop. You can't counter a land drop. Control decks reasonably get rolled over on game 1, unless something spectacularly good happens for them or something spectacularly bad happens for me. They just get rolled over game 1. Aggro decks are another story. Some can just blitz before I have a good amount of defenders down, or could just be killing my defenders. Searing Spear on Fogbank, or Victim of Night on Victim of Night, or Tragic Slip on Tree of Redemption. Stuff like that. So we have the Fog there. I knew I wanted board sweeping, but because I was semi-depending on wanting defenders out and wanting Axebane Guardian for lots of mana and lots of ramp, I wanted one-sided sweepers that would only hurt my opponent. So that ruled out Supreme Verdict and Planar Cleansing and stuff like that, which would have been great sweepers to have considering I'm running all 5 colors. So the sweepers that I decided on were Magma Quake, which has the benefit of hitting Planeswalkers, because I can't reliably deal with a Planeswalker because none of my creatures attack. I was thinking of putting Dreadbore in for that. It depends on how serious the Planeswalker problem becomes. But Magma Quake sweeps the board. It won't kill my Angelic Wall. It won't kill my Fogbank. It won't kill Tree of Redemption. And I can play it so that it can be 3 where it won't kill my 4 toughness, or it can be 2 where it won't kill my 3 toughness. Important defenders while also clearing out my opponents. Like like an aggro deck's just 2 or 3 power creatures that are just rushing me. Cyclonic Rift fits as another sweeper that won't affect me. Ideally, I want to save this. Ideally, if I feel like I can get to 7, I want to save this for that and just overload it, either on my opponent's turn or possibly have them tap out, and at the end of their turn, just Cyclonic Rift, bounce everything they have, which gives me even more time to set up. We have Mizium Mortars, which again is another one-sided sweeper, and then of course Bonfire, another one-sided sweeper. So most of my sweepers are in the red colors. Aside from those, there's Increasing Ambition to fetch. Increasing Ambition can either hit a door. Say if I feel like I might not get there with Maze, and I have the things available to hit a door, I can grab a door, flash it back, grab door and Chromatic, or grab a Maze's End, or if I'm in a tight spot, I can grab a Fog for the moment, or flash it back, grab a fog and a card that I may need. So I don't know if 4 is needed, but for now I'm running 4. So we've also got Jason here. He's part of the mill win condition. He's very well protected because just look at all my defenders. He's just, when he comes on the board, it's very rare that my opponent can just swing at him and that's it. When Jace lands, Jace usually ends the game if they don't have a Dreadbore or some type of direct damage that's going to bypass attacking. So let's get to the lands. So we have 36 lands total because this is a 90 card deck, of course. We have 3 of every Guild Gate except for Orzhov Guild Gate, which is we have 2 of because black and white are statistically my least used colors, or rather my least depended on colors, when I look at the numbers. 4 Maze's End. This is a Maze's End deck after all. And Thespian Stage. Now this was a land that no one acknowledges even exists, honestly, or at least no one in Standard, anyways. I'm not sure how it's faring in the other formats, but I wanted to test this out because Thespian Stage gives me certain things. For one, Thespian Stage is the only card in the deck that doesn't come into play tapped. That's an important thing because one of the hardest parts when I first started playing the deck, one of the hardest things to get used to, was that all my plays are coming a turn later. My 2 drops are coming on turn 3, my 3 drops are coming on turn 4, and so on and so forth, because all gates come into the battlefield tapped. And I remember playing my first 2 matches when I was first tuning and testing the deck. I remember wishing that Maze's End had a clause that said gates you control into the battlefield untapped, because that would at least help, because it's a thing that is hard to get used to. But once you get used to that, once you say, okay, I know all my plays are going to come a turn later, you can build your deck around that, and you can plan and play around that. But Thespian Stage being the only land that doesn't come in tapped means that if I have one in my hand, I can make a turn 2 play or make a turn 3 play without waiting for the next turn if that's necessary. Something else that it does as well is it can copy a maze. This comes in useful. There was a control deck I fought that had Tamio and would just tap my maze down every single turn. Thespian, I managed to still win that game because I had a Thespian Stage that would just come down, copy Maze's End, and on the next turn pop it, and then just keep doing that over and over and over. Um, but not only will it copy my maze, I've used it to copy a guild gate to get certain right colors for door to nothingness. Like if I had doubles, if I had 10 lands but they weren't all different guild gates, I would copy a guild gate that had the color that I needed and just pop a door to nothingness. Also, I'm playing 5 colors. This means all of the specialty utility lands I have the mana to use. I have the mana to use Desolate Lighthouse, Kessig Wolfrun, Nephalia Drownyard, whatever. If my opponent's running those lands, Thespian Stage can copy that and give me those effects. Kessig Wolfrun means that my defenders can now start killing things when they block them. Nephalia Drownyard adds more to the mill if my opponent has that. There's just times where against one of the current powerhouses in the format, Esper Control, this deck just literally rolls it over. I will either mazes and or mill them out before they mill me. It's not even a fair fight, and that's supposedly one of the better decks in the format currently. But yeah, Thespian Stage. It's a thing. It's a thing. So, sideboard, Psychic Spiral, for decks that want to mill me. It adds even more to my mill, because when I get into mill wars with decks, Psychic Spiral is just a nail in the coffin. Because not only do I have more cards already than them, so they have to work harder to mill me. It's just Psychic Spiral is just Psychic Spiral with Jace, with Sands, with Doorkeeper is just the final nail in the coffin. Rest in peace, because there are a bunch of really nasty Reanimator decks that people have been brewing using the Dragon's Maze card. Like I had someone discard a Omniscience and then cast Obsidat's Aid on it and had it like turn 5 Omniscience. It was ridiculous. Just crazy stuff like that. Slaughter Games, because I have the colors for it and it just gets rid of pesky cards when I need it to. Terminus for Terminus will hit my creatures as well, but this is for this comes in when I need it against just decks that want to smash my face before I can really do anything. This comes in when I need it. We've got Golgari Charm. I put this in originally because I think it was for regenerative purposes. Against certain decks like that would just have Supreme Verdict. I don't necessarily depend on Axebane Guardian, but it's very nice to have. So I figured, against those decks, I could bring these in to regenerate my defenders if they tried to wipe the board, because my defenders don't just sit there; they will sit there and give me mana. So people will try to wipe a board full of defenders. I've seen them do it, and it's certainly a good option when your opponent's defenders are giving him 5 mana. So I think I've gone over everything. So that's pretty much the deck. And you're probably thinking this looks like a pile of shit. It's a 90 card deck. It's using not one, not two, but 3 not very popular win conditions in standard. It's just it looks and look at this. Look at all these commons and look at all of these. I remember coming into a game and I dropped my first 2 lands and my opponent was confused for a moment. He thought he had accidentally made the room a pauper room. I don't know if you know. Pauper is a format where I think only commons are used, very cheap cards essentially, and the power level's really low. My opponent was just confused. He thought he accidentally made a pauper room and not a standard room, and I went on to beat that opponent. So, the deck doesn't look very impressive, but once you see it in action, and even if you want to put it together yourself and test it, by all means, it's a blast to play. And building this deck is one of my favorite things in Magic, and that is creating crazy rogue brews that that actually work. It feels so good. And then secondly, creating rogue brews with cards that people have written off. Like, there are just some opponents who just after I win, they go, I can't believe you actually won a game against me with that card. All right, I remember the very first game I won with this deck. I had mentioned in the lobby that I was playing with Dragon's Maze, and I was about to with Maze's End rather, and I was about to combo off, and like 10 people entered the room to spectate, and just everyone just went hype after the match had been won. With one guy, he messaged me, and he was like, when I came into the room and I looked at how many cards were in your deck and what you were playing, I was laughing at you. But by the end of it, that was amazing, and that that really made me that made me happy. That made me happy. But so far, I'm really enjoying the deck. I'm really enjoying testing it. Really enjoying tuning it. You know, this won't be the last version, and ideally, I'd want to get down to a 60 card version that I feel works. But so far, I feel like the best version is the 90 card version right now. But we'll see if we can continue playing, continue cutting, and maybe even maybe adding better cards that I, for whatever reason, either cut in an earlier version or whatever. We'll just see how the deck goes. Like I had Dragon Shift before, and I cut that because I never got to use it, and I may even cut Sands and some other things as well. So yeah, this is Maze's End, and there's some other Dragon's Maze decks that I've been working on that I'd like to share as well in other videos. But Dragon's Maze looks amazing. Can't wait for the pre-release, and I'm really happy to be brewing with some of these cards, especially Maze's End. I keep calling this card Dragon's Maze. I'm just gonna call it Dragon's Maze. Screw this. So yeah, let's see this thing. Let's see this thing in action.